Hello from COP27 in Egypt, where I'm joined by Vice-President Ambroise Fayolle from the European Investment Bank, who's in charge of climate and development. Thanks for joining us, Vice President. Here at COP, the role of the multilateral development banks is very much part of the discussion, particularly in terms of obviously ratcheting up climate finance, whether that is for mitigation or adaptation. But the call is to do more and do it better. Is that fair enough, do you think?
Well, I think we should first recognize that MDBs are doing much more than they used to do. We have published 2 weeks ago our climate finance report for 21, and what it shows is that the volumes that MDBs are doing for climate action are increasing significantly. We are now at 82 billion euros, which includes actually 51 for low and middle income countries. And in low and middle income countries, it is mostly adaptation. It was altogether a bit more than 60 billion in 2020, so it is actually on a trend that is quite positive. And let's start by saying, okay, not saying always we couldn't do more, saying we are doing more. Mm-hmm. Now the problem is that the needs are huge. And that's why it's important that all MDBs are taking commitments to do more. We have at EIB taken these commitments to double our share of projects for climate and environment by 2025, to triple our share of adaptation projects in the climate share from 5 to 15% by 2025. So these are commitments that are really serious, that needs to be implemented. This is COP implementation, and it is important that we show that the commitment that we have taken collectively and individually, we move forward. Now, how to say that we can do more? Yes, we can do more. And we can do more actually in a number of things where the needs are really, really big. And for that, we will need to have more of the private capital. And we can do more in things where we are not active enough, I would say. And I would think in particular of us, but actually this is something that is probably also valid for many other institutions. One is nature and biodiversity. We have worked on that among MDBs this year. We have published a joint statement. We need to be more active there ahead of the COP15 in Montreal in 2 weeks' time. The other one is upstream. I would say that when you look at projects, volumes are important, but also how you accompany.
Yes. When you talk about upstream, what does that mean for the viewers who may not know that?
It means everything that is before you see the project.
Right.
So how you accompany, for example, a city to put in place its strategy for transport, clean transport, wastewater, water, energy that is consistent with the objectives of the climate policy that they should have. So
and I guess that means countries as well, doesn't it? It means
countries as well.
Advising countries on their long-term strategies, how to get to those goals that they've committed themselves to, but they might not have a plan for yet.
Yeah, and this is what we also are working on, which is how can we help put in place a facility that would allow those countries that are working on long-term strategy. They all have, or most of them have NDCs now. Mm-hmm. But when you look at the long-term strategy, and this is not easy, especially for countries with little capacity, you need to help them achieve that.
Adaptation, you mentioned, has been one of those topics that they said would be centre stage here at COP. Has it been? And to what extent do you think the MDBs and the methodology that they've brought forward, that the EIB has been very involved in leading, in fact, how is that going to help?
So yes, it has been at the centre of this COP, because it is a COP in Africa. And in Africa, you see that the needs are, unfortunately, very importantly for adaptation, because you already live with the consequences of climate change in Africa. And you are not only going to deal with mitigation and the need to reduce the level of greenhouse gases. Now, among MDBs, we have worked a lot on a methodology for tracking adaptation. And we have did that, and we have published that. And I think it is quite important we need to speak the same language. We need to have the same way of measuring things. Measuring things is very important if you want to convince that there is a problem and that you need to increase the volumes that you do there. And it's also important to avoid to have for adaptation what we see in terms of greenwashing elsewhere. So I think yes, it is important, and it will help us collectively MDBs move forward in selecting the good projects, in selecting where we can add in terms of adaptation.
Very briefly, I've heard here at COP27, and I guess you have as well, private investors, because this is a gathering of financial people as well as governments, say that MDBs don't take enough risk, and especially when it comes to innovation, the future solutions. Do you think that's a fair criticism?
It is a fair criticism, but I would start by saying private sector also need to take more risk. All the risk cannot be taken by the public sector institutions. And often when we discuss with private investors, we have the feeling that they need to take more risk, basically. But we need to have structures of financing, ways of dealing with projects that gives more space to first loss species, to guarantees, everything that will allow actually the private sector to be more active and take more risks. So that's what I think we should aim at. And that's going to happen. We need that. We need this new way of thinking. I very much welcome the report that has been actually presented by Lord Stern earlier in the COP, to see how we can move on capital, the reflection that we have now on how we can have a capital allocation framework that is conducive more MDBs to lend more basically for climate. So I think we are moving in this direction, but we all need to take more risks, not only the public sector.
Just finally, so do you feel optimistic leaving the COP if you think we're moving in the right direction?
I feel very optimistic because there is a lot of energy here. There are a lot of ideas here. There are people who are really believers in what they are doing, and that makes me very, very optimistic. What we need to do now is to go outside and convince the rest of the people who are not there and who are not necessarily convinced.
Thank you very much, Vice President. Important words there. That's all from us for the moment. Bye.